The photograph was taken on the morning of March 14th, 1873, in the parlour of Grimwood Manor, Ashford-on-Trent, Nottinghamshire. It shows a small coffin, child-sized, surrounded by mourners dressed in black. 15 people in total. Their faces are blurred, as was common with the long exposure times of the era. But there is something in the photograph, something that should not be there. If you look closely at the coffin, at the small white hand resting on its satin-lined edge, you will notice the fingers. They are curved, gripping, not arranged in the peaceful repose of death, but clutching, as if trying to pull themselves upward. England in 1873 was a nation caught between superstition and science. The fear of premature burial had reached epidemic proportions. Medical journals published detailed accounts, case studies of cataleptic patients declared dead, only to revive hours or days later. The Victorian era was obsessed with death, with its rituals, its propriety, its terrifying unknowns. Physicians had limited tools. No stethoscopes capable of detecting faint heartbeats, no electrocardiograms, no blood pressure cuffs. They relied on observation, the misting of a mirror held to the lips, the absence of a pulse at the wrist, the coldness of the skin. But in cases of profound coma, of neurological catastrophe, these signs could deceive even the most experienced doctor. The air in those parlors smelled of lilies, of formaldehyde, of beeswax candles and damp wool. The gas lamps hissed softly, casting shadows that moved like living things. And in the corner, always in the corner, stood the photographer, his camera a wooden box, his plates coated in silver salts, capturing moments that could never be repeated. Nathaniel Grimwood was 9 years old, the only child of Thomas and Eleanor Grimwood, wealthy landowners, respected in the county, known for their patronage of the local church. Nathaniel was described by his tutor, Mr. Gerald Ashfield, as precocious, curious beyond his years. He collected insects, pressed flowers between the pages of books, asked questions about the stars, about the mechanisms of clocks, about whether animals dreamed. He was not sickly. His health had always been robust. He ran through the fields, climbed trees, played with the children of tenant farmers. There was no history of epilepsy, no fainting spells, no indication of cardiac weakness. And yet, on the morning of March 11th, Nathaniel collapsed during breakfast. The housekeeper found him, Mrs. Tabitha Prescott, a woman of 52 years who had served the family for 3 decades. She entered the dining room at 7:45, carrying a tray of fresh bread and marmalade. Nathaniel was slumped in his chair, his head tilted back, his eyes open but unseeing. She screamed, dropped the tray. Glass shattered across the floorboards. Dr. Marcus Bellwether arrived within the hour, a physician of considerable reputation, trained at Guy's Hospital in London, 31 years of practice. He examined the boy thoroughly, checked the pulse at the wrist, at the throat, at the temple. Nothing. He held a mirror to Nathaniel's lips. No condensation. He pressed his ear to the boy's chest, listened for minutes. No heartbeat. Dr. Bellwether's notes, preserved in the archives of the Nottinghamshire Medical Society, record the following. Quote, "Patient exhibits complete cessation of cardiopulmonary function, body temperature declining rapidly. Rigor mortis anticipated within 4 to 6 hours. No detectable signs of life. Time of death, 8:15 in the morning." End quote. The body was prepared. washed by Mrs. Prescott and the chambermaid, dressed in Nathaniel's Sunday clothes, a white linen shirt, black woolen trousers, shoes polished to a mirror shine. He was laid in the coffin on the evening of March 12th. The coffin was small, made of oak, lined with white satin. His hands were folded across his chest, a rosary threaded between his fingers. The wake was held in the parlor. Candles burned at the head and foot of the coffin. Mourners arrived throughout the night. Neighbors, relatives from as far as Derby, members of the parish. They whispered prayers, offered condolences, remarked on how peaceful he looked. But there was something that several witnesses later mentioned, under oath. Nathaniel's face. It did not seem to grow paler as the hours passed. In fact, some said it appeared to retain a faint warmth, a slight flush in the cheeks. Mrs. Prescott mentioned this to Dr. Bellwether, who returned to the manor at midnight. He examined the body again, pressed his fingers to the throat, held the mirror once more. Still nothing. He attributed the warmth to the heat of the candles, to the closeness of the room, to the emotional distress of the household. He pronounced the body suitable for burial. The funeral was scheduled for the morning of March 14th.
Reverend Thomas Killian presided. He had baptized Nathaniel, had taught him the catechism, had watched him grow. The service began at 9 o'clock. The mourners assembled in the parlor, 15 people, including the boy's parents. Dr. Bellwether, Mr. Ashfield, the tutor, and several members of the staff. Reverend Killian read from the Book of Common Prayer, his voice steady, practiced, comforting. He spoke of eternal life, of reunion in heaven, of the innocence of children taken too soon. And then, at 9:23, according to the grandfather clock in the hallway, Nathaniel Grimwood opened his eyes. Mrs. Prescott saw it first. She was standing closest to the coffin, her hands clasped in prayer. She later testified, in a deposition taken by Magistrate Sir Edmund Cartwright, that she saw the boy's eyelids flutter, then open fully. His eyes were blue, clear, focused. He turned his head slowly, as if waking from deep sleep, and looked directly at his mother. Eleanor Grimwood fainted. The Reverend stopped mid-sentence. Dr. Bellwether rushed forward, pushed past the mourners, reached into the coffin. Nathaniel's hand, the one that had been folded across his chest, was now gripping the edge of the coffin. His fingers were warm. Dr. Bellwether checked the pulse. It was there, faint, but unmistakable. 40 beats per minute, then 50, then 60. The boy's lips moved. He tried to speak. His voice was a whisper, dry, hoarse. Mr. Ashfield, the tutor, leaned close. He later wrote in his private journal, now held by the British Library, that Nathaniel said the following, quote, "I heard everything, every word, but I could not move. I could not breathe. I was trapped." End quote. The photographer, a man named Samuel Ridley, had been hired to document the funeral. Post-mortem photography was common. Families wanted a final image, a keepsake. Ridley had set up his camera before the service, a large wooden box on a tripod, glass plates prepared, ready to capture the scene. When Nathaniel sat up, Ridley, in a moment of instinct, triggered the shutter. The exposure lasted 7 seconds, long enough to capture the coffin, the mourners, the boy pulling himself upright. That photograph still exists. It is kept in a private collection, the Grimwood estate papers,
now owned by a descendant in Hampshire. I have seen a reproduction. The image is unsettling, not because of what it shows, but because of what it implies.
Nathaniel was lifted from the coffin, carried to his bedroom. Dr. Bellwether conducted a full examination. Heart rate, normal. Respiration, normal. Pupillary response, normal. The boy was conscious, alert, able to answer questions. But when asked what he remembered, his answers were disturbing. He said he had been aware the entire time, from the moment he collapsed at breakfast, through the examination, through the preparation of his body, through the wake, through the first half of the funeral service. He said he had heard voices, felt hands touching him, felt the cold of the satin lining, but he could not respond, could not cry out, could not move a single muscle. Dr. Bellwether documented this in his case notes. He wrote, quote, "Patient describes a state of complete neuromuscular paralysis with retention of full consciousness. This condition, if accurate, defies all known medical understanding. No mechanism exists by which the brain can remain active without cardiopulmonary support. I am unable to explain this case." End quote. Nathaniel remained in bed for 3 days. Dr. Bellwether visited twice daily, monitoring his vital signs, recording observations. The boy's recovery appeared complete. No residual weakness, no confusion, no neurological deficits. But there was something the doctor noted, but did not fully understand. Nathaniel spoke differently. His speech patterns had changed. He used words he had not known before, medical terms, Latin phrases, anatomical descriptions. When asked where he had learned these words, he said he had heard them during his death. He had heard Dr. Bellwether's examination, had absorbed every word, every technical term, every diagnostic observation. He repeated them back verbatim, perfectly. On March 17th, 4 days after the funeral, Nathaniel began to complain of nightmares. He said he dreamed of being underground, of soil pressing down on the coffin lid, of scratching at wood until his fingers bled. His mother tried to comfort him, told him it was only a dream, that he was safe, that he had not been buried. But Nathaniel insisted. He said he could still feel it, the weight, the darkness, the suffocation. On March 20th, he refused to sleep in his bed. He said it felt too much like the coffin, too narrow, too confining. He began sleeping on the floor, by the window where he could see the sky. By April, he had stopped speaking altogether. Dr. Bellwether consulted with colleagues, specialists in London, neurologists, alienists, experts in disorders of the mind. They proposed various diagnoses: catalepsy, hysteria, epileptic trance. But none could explain the complete cessation of vital signs. None could account for the boy's accurate memory of events that occurred while he was clinically dead. One physician, Dr. Cornelius Hargrave, of the Royal College of Surgeons, suggested that Nathaniel had experienced what he termed, quote, a dissociation of consciousness from corporeal function, end quote. He theorized, though he had no evidence, that in rare cases the mind could continue even after the body had failed, sustained by some unknown mechanism, some reservoir of electrical activity that modern science had not yet discovered. The photograph, taken by Samuel Ridley, was developed 3 days after the funeral. Ridley's assistant, a young man named Peter Hollis, later testified that when the image emerged in the chemical bath, Ridley stood staring at it for nearly an hour. He refused to deliver it to the Grimwood family. He said it was wrong, that something about it was, quote, unholy." End quote. The photograph shows the coffin, the mourners in their dark clothes, faces blurred by movement, except for one, Nathaniel. Because he had been lying still for so long, his face is perfectly clear, eyes open, looking directly at the camera. His hand, the one gripping the coffin's edge, is sharp, distinct, unmistakable. But there is something else in the photograph, something that was not noticed until years later. Behind Nathaniel, in the shadows at the back of the room, there is a figure, faint, almost imperceptible, dressed in the same white linen shirt, the same black woolen trousers, standing, watching. It was dismissed as a double exposure, an artifact of the photographic process. But Samuel Ridley swore, until his death in 1891, that he had taken only one photograph that day. Nathaniel Grimwood disappeared on May 2nd, 1873, 7 weeks after his funeral. His bed was found empty at dawn, the window open, a cold wind blowing through the room. Search parties combed the estate, the surrounding fields, the woods along the river. Nothing was found. No footprints, no torn clothing, no sign of struggle. It was as if he had simply ceased to exist. Thomas and Eleanor Grimwood never recovered. Eleanor died in 1876 of what the death certificate listed as, quote, melancholia and nervous exhaustion, end quote. Thomas lived until 1888, but he rarely spoke, rarely left the manor. He kept Nathaniel's room exactly as it had been. The bed made, the toys arranged on the shelf, the window always open.
Dr. Bellwether's case notes were sealed by order of the Nottinghamshire Medical Society. They remained classified until 1947, when they were donated to the British Medical Journal archives. The photograph, the one taken by Samuel Ridley, was never publicly displayed. It passed through several private collections, always accompanied by a note warning the owner not to study it too closely, not to look too long at the figure in the background. Grimwood Manor was sold in 1892. It burned to the ground in 1903. The fire was ruled accidental, but witnesses reported that the flames seemed to start in Nathaniel's room. In 2011, a neurologist at Oxford University, Dr. Helena Voss, published a paper in the Journal of Consciousness Studies titled, quote, Residual Neural Activity in Clinically Deceased Patients, end quote. She cited historical cases, including Nathaniel Grimwood. She proposed that in extreme conditions, the brain might enter a state of, quote, suspended animation, end quote. Metabolic activity slowed to undetectable levels, but consciousness somehow preserved. She noted that modern resuscitation techniques have revived patients after 30 minutes, an hour, even longer, and that some of these patients report memories of the time they were dead. She concluded that we do not yet understand the boundary between life and death, that perhaps there is no boundary, only a gradient, a transition that we are only beginning to map. The photograph still exists, somewhere, in a private collection, in a locked drawer, in a house in Hampshire. I have requested permission to view it. The current owner has declined. They wrote back, a single sentence, quote, some things should remain buried, end quote. If you found this story unsettling, if you're lying in bed tonight and you find yourself wondering whether consciousness truly ends when the heart stops beating, consider this. Nathaniel Grimwood heard everything. Every word spoken over his body, every prayer,
every sob, every measurement taken by Dr. Bellwether. He was there, trapped, aware, unable to scream. And if it happened to him in 1873, with no warning, no explanation, no way to predict it, then perhaps it could happen to anyone, at any time, even now. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, into the documented mysteries that history tried to forget, please subscribe to Forgotten Dread Tales. Leave a comment below, share your thoughts, or share your own family stories of things that shouldn't have happened, but did. Until next time, sleep well, if you can.